Peace lilies, we love them because they're super hardy plants with its beautiful foliage and beautiful flowers that come in abundant variety. But it can be so annoying when that foliage actually goes brown and crispy. Today I'm going to share with you reasons why your peace lily leaves might be going brown crispy and what to do about it. Now with peace lilies, these are super thirsty plants. I find they tend to be underwatered rather than being overwatered, and they need a lot of water. Peace lilies can actually grow in water by itself, so you can see how much water this plant requires. And you can tell a peace lily needs watering because the leaves will start to wilt. It can be super dramatic, like one day it's okay, the next day all the leaves are wilting down. And it's pretty cool and interesting when you actually give the peace lily water again and the leaves perk right back up. But this is actually not really good for the peace lily, and consistently making the plant wilt to this stage can cause the leaves to go brown and crispy. So you want to catch before this happens. You want to avoid to the extent where the leaves are actually wilting. So you want to make sure that the soil there is always some moisture in the soil, that the soil is not completely dry before re-watering a peace lily. So I tend to leave my peace lily generally about 1 or 2 inches of the topsoil to be dry before I re-water my peace lily. And the water that I use, I find that with peace lily, it can be kind of susceptible to the chemicals in the water. So you can use tap water, but it can be susceptible to chemicals in the tap water. So it's more preferable to use things like distilled water or rainwater or filtered water, or you can use a product called coating stress product, which is a product you use for aquariums, and it gets rid of all the hard metals and the chemicals in the water before watering your peace lily. I also find that it's important to, when growing a peace lily, because they're such a thirsty type of plant, and the soil mixture is important, because if you use a soil mixture that is too well draining, like a complete cactus soil mixture, you're going to end up having to water your peace lily literally every single day, and there's not enough moisture held in the soil that the peace lily is going to like. So I avoid using cactus soil. I tend to use a soil mixture that consists of really potting mix and 10% perlite, and this gives a soil mixture that holds a lot of moisture but still maintains some drainage as well. And also the other part is that with peace lily, because it's so water thirsty, I tend to avoid pots that are like terracotta pots, because terracotta pot, it actually dries the soil a lot more faster compared to a plastic nursery pot or a glazed ceramic pot or a glazed terracotta pot. Because just a pure terracotta pot, the water doesn't evaporate just on the top of the soil, it's going to evaporate on the sides of the soil. So I completely would avoid using a terracotta pot while growing a peace lily. And the other main culprit I find when causing the leaves to go brown and crispy is the sunlight. Now, peace lilies come from the tropical rainforest, but they're actually on the bottom part of the rainforest. So they're on the ground underneath the canopy of the rainforest. So they actually don't really get much direct sunlight. They actually get dappled indirect sunlight underneath the canopy. So the leaves, I find that they're very susceptible to sunburn. And I've put literally one peace lily outside, and it didn't acclimate it properly, and it was in direct sunlight, and literally it just burnt that day, and that peace lily died. So I find with peace lily, they do like sunlight, but they more want indirect sunlight, generally about 1 to 2 meters away from direct sunlight. If you can't put in the area that's completely indirect sunlight, just push it a bit further away from a window. And you'll find that with a peace lily, it's going to be a lot more happier, because if you put a peace lily that has direct sunlight, the leaves are actually going to burn. And once the leaves are burned and damaged, you can't do anything about it. The only thing you can do is cut the leaves off or cut those burnt parts off. Also, I find with peace lilies, they are hardy plants. They can tolerate a big range of temperature. So I find with peace lilies, they can range between temperatures of 5 degrees to something around about 30 degrees. When you get to the extreme ends of the temperature, whether it's too cold or too hot, they can actually cause damage on the leaves. And so this is more important, like if you put in a peace lily that's too close to a window, where maybe in winter at night time, it's actually getting too cold, it can damage the leaves. Or if you put a peace lily that's underneath things like air conditioning or drafty areas there, that can cause the actual leaves to actually wilt and become brown as well. Now, to actually try and maintain the leaves and avoid these drastic temperature changes, the best thing to do is that if in winter, maybe wrap your peace lily in a clear plastic wrap, and this will help to avoid the extreme temperature drops in the middle of the night, especially if you have a lot of plants and there's literally nowhere else you can put your peace lily but right near a window. Maybe just make sure that it's wrapped up in that plastic wrap to reduce the actual temperature dropping too fast and too quickly, or otherwise just pull the curtains down, just avoid that cold sort of temperature drop as well. And also the peace lily there, if there is drastic temperature changes, you might find that maybe at the start of the season there, maybe just try and acclimate the plant to the changes in temperature. So what I mean that, say for example, in the middle of summer in Melbourne, it can get to things like 30, 35 degrees, 40 degrees. And what I can do is actually move my peace lily away from the air conditioner, but still lower the temperature down. So instead of being the household being say 35 degrees, lower it down to around about 30 degrees so that the actual plant can acclimate to the higher temperatures. Or if it's in winter, do the opposite, maybe increase the temperature slightly in the household and then slowly acclimate the plant to the lower temperatures by lowering down the temperature of the home. Also, I find that when watering a peace lily, especially this is more important in winter when the household tends to be cold, you can put a peace lily into shock, and when a peace lily is under stress or shock, it can actually damage the leaves. So what I tend to do is when I'm watering my peace lily in winter, I tend to use lukewarm water, and this helps to reduce the stress on the plant because the plant is already cold there. If I add cold water to it, it's actually going to be often too much for the plant. So I just use lukewarm water just to make sure that it's actually a little bit of a little bit of spa for the plant, just to give it a little bit of extra TLC so that's actually happier during the colder weather of winter. Now, the other time that I find that a peace lily, the edges of the leaves can go brown is that if I over fertilize my peace lily. Now, I do find that peace lilies they do love their fertilizing, especially when they're producing flowers. But if I happen to over fertilize my peace lily, I will see it in the edges of the leaves, and that's because a lot of fertilizer that contains salts, and if over fertilizing a peace lily or any sort of real plant, what can happen is that the salts in the fertilizer can actually stay in the soil, and with the salt, plants don't really like a large accumulation of salts in the soil. This can actually damage the leaves and cause that browning. So if you ever find that you see these little white sort of crystals in the soil, it's a good idea to flush the soil. And by flushing the soil, I mean that take your plant outside and just use a hose and just completely hose the soil so that all those salts are actually washed away. And make sure that all the excess water is drained away before you put your peace lily back in the pot. And this will help to flush all the salts away. And they're the main reasons I find why a peace lily, the leaves will go brown and crispy. I haven't had really any issues with my peace lily when it comes to pests, but it's always good, like any sort of plant, just to check for pests, because like anything, all plants are susceptible to pests. Actually, the only other time I find that the peace lily, the leaves can go a lot of brown is that if you're finding that the lower leaves of the peace lily is going brown, like the older leaves, that's quite normal. So if you see a lot of the older leaves going brown, that's quite normal. It means that the plant has done its job, it's photosynthesized, it's produced its energy for the plant, and now the leaf is dying off. So that's a normal cycle of the life of a leaf. If you're finding that the younger leaves are going brown and crispy, that's more when there's more of an issue. So if you do find that the older leaves are going brown and crispy, what I tend to do, I just cut them off. And the final reason I find that a peace lily leaves will go brown and crispy is that if the actual plant is root bound, and the reason for that is if the peace lily plant is root bound, what's going to happen is that it's not going to be able to absorb enough water or nutrients and grow those healthy, beautiful foliage and flowers. And so just definitely check the roots of your peace lily and making sure that whether it needs to be repotted. And I find the best time to repot a peace lily is at the start of spring, because this will give enough warmth for the plant to actually produce a lot more leaves and actually recover from repotting, from the process of repotting. For myself, I haven't had any issues with humidity. I used to use a humidifier for my plants, but these days I find that I don't use any humidity techniques at all. The reason for that is that I find that I rather let my plants acclimate to the humidity level of my home rather than using a humidifier. And you know, there are some people who use like misters, like go around and mist their plants. If that works for you, fantastic, but I personally can't be bothered, and I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference, because the amount of time that you require to actually mist the plants, you literally have to mist like every few hours. So for myself, I don't have that time. I've got so many plants, I don't have time to mist, and I just don't think it works. But if you find that you're misting your peace lily and it works, I'd love to read about it in the comment section down below. If you have any tips of your own why you find that your peace lily leaves went brown and you solved the issue, I'd love to read about in the comment section down below. And don't forget, if you find this content helpful, please help your crazy plant lady out me by hitting the likes button and subscribing to the channel. Now, if you have issues of your peace lily not flowering, watch this video here where I explain to you how to encourage your peace lily to flower. I'll see you next video.